From South Carolina Public Radio, this is the South Carolina Lede. I'm your host, Gavin Jackson, and this episode was recorded on October 6, 2025, from Washington, D.C., our nation's capital, specifically a Homewood Suites. Yes, my hotel room here, right down the street from the U.S. Congress, which is shut down still. The federal government is shut down, and that's wreaking havoc on our plans, our production schedule, but we'll have more about that in our wind down, the Leeds in DC. And again, through the magic of the internet and technology, I am recording this remotely with AT, so if you hear some blips and bleeps or some roominess in this audio, it's because I'm again in a Homewood Suites. We love good audio on this podcast, and we don't want to subject you to bad audio. This is still better than the Durango. I miss you, Durango. On this episode of The Lead, we look at what's on tap this week in South Carolina, catch you up on the latest with the shutdown. There's another vote taking place. I can't cover it because I can't get into Congress because I can't get a credential. The U.S. Supreme Court begins its new term, and we look at some cases it's taking up, as well as DOGE in South Carolina. Remember DOGE? It's still around. We also take a deep look at the latest on domestic violence in the state with Sara Barber from SCCADVASA as we begin Domestic Violence Awareness Month. So a lot in this episode. And we also need more in this episode. And how do we do that? Well, that's your part, folks. You got to call us at 803-563-7169. Give us a shout. We want to talk to you in the wind down section. There's so much going on, but let's focus on the good and some fun, random, benign stuff like fall, Halloween, etc. Let us know. 803-563-7169. We'd love to hear from you guys. All right, let's start off by looking at what's on tap this week at the State House. On Tuesday, the Joint Bond Review Committee meets to take up some infrastructure projects, some permanent improvement projects. On Wednesday, the House Ad Hoc Committee on the SCDOT modernization holds a hearing in Beaufort. And in Congress, the House is once again out for the week while the Senate remains in dealing with the shutdown. Speaking of Washington, it is day 6 as of this recording of the federal government shutdown, and we are in D.C. covering our delegation this week. Like we said, the Senate is set to vote again today, Monday, but we'll need 8 Democrats to join its ranks to pass that continuing resolution, and it's not likely things will change with another vote, the 5th vote that will take place this evening as both sides continue to dig in. So again, this is following a 4th failed vote on the House-approved continuing resolution in the Senate last Friday. House Speaker Mike Johnson said that the House would not return this week, and House members have not been in session since September 19th. I'm here, as you guys know.
Yes. From
Washington this week, amid the ongoing federal government shutdown. We were trying to avoid this when we scheduled this. We planned this months ago, honestly. And I was like, oh, October 1st, if anything, they'll pass a CR and we'll just kind of roll with it. But no, we are in full-fledged government shutdown right now, so we had some plans to talk with members of our congressional delegation. Those interviews are falling through now.
I'm sorry, what?
Hopefully we'll have an interview with Senator Lindsey Graham we can bring you later this week. So this is all stemming from the showdown between Democrats and Republicans, with Senate Democrats insisting that expiring Affordable Care Act tax credits be a part of the proposed continuing resolution, which keeps the government funded at current levels. But they want to make sure that those tax credits are in there ahead of open enrollment for the health insurance program. Republicans have promised the issue will be addressed later in the year, but again, there's concerns over that even happening. Now, most federal workers are set to miss their first paycheck this Friday as a result of the funding lapse. Now, on Monday, during a press conference, House Speaker Mike Johnson blamed Democrats and Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer for the shutdown and rejected a challenge from House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries to debate on the House floor. Here's Speaker Johnson.
Or would you
when the poll says that about 13% of the people approve of your messaging, then you make desperate pleas for attention, and that's what Hakeem Jeffries has done. Look, my friend Hakeem had his shot. We debated all this on the House floor, as you know, before he passed our bill. He spoke for 7 or 8 minutes. He had all of his colleagues lined up. They gave it their best shot, and they argued, and they stomped their feet and screamed at us and all that. And still, we passed the bill in bipartisan fashion and sent it over to the Senate. The House has done its job. I'm not going to let Hakeem try to pretend for these theatrics. I mean, this is a Chuck Schumer decision. The ball is in the Senate's court now. The House has done this. We don't need to waste time on that nonsense. Those debates have been had. Hakeem is a friend and a colleague. I respect him, but we all know what he's trying to do there.
Schumer was on CBS News' Face the Nation, where moderator Margaret Brennan asked about the debunked Republican claim about federal dollars going to fund health care for illegal immigrants.
Johnson doesn't want to discuss the real issue, the healthcare crisis facing the American people, so he puts up all these fake lies to try and divert attention. It's his standard operation. He just is concerned with the politics. Every independent agency that looks at this says Johnson's claim is false. And just as you said, Margaret, zero federal dollars can go to undocumented immigrants through Medicare, through Medicaid, through ACA. And so we ought to be talking about the real issue here, which is that we have a healthcare crisis in America caused by the Republicans. They've barreled us towards a shutdown because they don't want to deal with that crisis, plain and simple.
Let's talk about the shutdown in a moment. In terms of healthcare, where you've taken us in terms of the messaging, Democrats, as I understand it, are looking for an extension of those Obamacare tax credit. I believe you'd like them permanently. You heard the speaker say we can talk about that after the government is reopened, perhaps not permanently. But do you hear any kind of opening here for a negotiation whatsoever?
Well, right now, not. Look, Johnson's not serious about this. He sent all his congressmen home last week and home this week. How are you going to negotiate when they're all there?
He says the job is in the Senate with you and Leader Thune.
Well, you actually need Johnson. If you're going to negotiate any agreement, you need Johnson, Thune, Trump, Schumer, and Jeffries. And the reason he sent them home is because he's more interested in protecting the Epstein files than protecting the American people from the healthcare crisis. We've been trying for months and months to sit down with them and have a serious conversation addressing America's healthcare needs. And they've refused and refused and refused. And just on your show and on other shows, when they ask him, well, will you do it in January? He says it's starting in January. He says, no, we'll have a conversation. Well, you know what? Later means never.
While Congress remains deadlocked, life continues in the nation's capital, though there are some signs of the shutdown's effects. The U.S. Capitol Visitor Center is closed. The Smithsonian Institution museums will remain open until October 11th, thanks to private donations previously collected. So if you're coming up to D.C., you can still pop into the museums for free. But there was a sign outside of the National Gallery of Art and its nearby sculpture garden that stated the area was closed due to the funding lapse. So didn't get to pop into there, but we do have some fun web videos of some South Carolina connections to Washington, D.C. that we'll be putting up on our YouTube page that you guys can find at youtube.com/South Carolina News. Also in Washington this week, the U.S. Supreme Court's new term is now underway, with many cases on its docket looking into President Donald Trump's expansive executive authority, including on his ability to impose the tariffs under the International Emergency Economic Act, as well as his ability to fire Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook. The tariff case is before the High Court on November 5th, but the first big case of note before the court comes Tuesday on Colorado's conversion therapy ban. Now, conversion therapy is a pseudoscience treatment that attempts to change a person's sexual orientation and is not a recognized treatment by any major medical or mental health organization. And at the center of that case is First Amendment rights. Now, the court has a 6-3 majority of Republican-appointed justices thanks to Trump, and the court has sided with the Trump administration roughly 20 times. In fact, Steve Vladeck, he's a professor at Georgetown University Law Center, said more than 140 rulings had been issued by judges blocking some initiatives of the Trump administration. So you got the federal judges blocking some of these initiatives, whereas you have the Supreme Court actually aligning with the Trump administration. So a lot of back and forth, a lot of lawfare, as they say. But let's head back down to South Carolina. Remember DOGE?
Yes.
Well, there is a Department of Government Efficiency in South Carolina. Yes, it's a grassroots initiative that is, quote, dedicated to eliminating the overreach of administrative agencies, commonly referred to as the fourth branch of government, that create, enforce, and adjudicate their own rules, often in violation of constitutional principles. That's from the group's founder, businessman Rom Reddy, a name you may know because he's been in a legal battle with what was then DHEC and is now the Department of Environmental Services over a seawall on his Isle of Palms beachfront property. Now, Reddy's DOGE SC has launched a 30-second TV spot featuring him, and the group has also launched its Palmetto Revolution Covenant 250 to make South Carolina the freest, most citizen-first self-governing state in America. A place where government is weak, citizens are strong, and the covenant between God and the citizen is restored on the eve of the nation's 250th anniversary. That's what they're talking about there for this Palmetto Revolution Covenant 250. So I'm bringing you all this information about DOGE SC because maybe you're seeing some of these ads, maybe even hearing about that. Just want to give you a little baseline on this. In fact, the group is also going to be announcing Palmetto Revolutionaries, which are candidates the group supports for upcoming statewide and local elections in 2026, such as the Comptroller General's race, among others. So something to be aware of, like I said. And this is a group that Wesley Donahue was doing communications work for. Wesley's a big name political consultant in circles in South Carolina and nationwide. So stay tuned for that. We'll be keeping up on what they're doing and how they're influencing elections going forward. Moving on, October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and South Carolina is tragically no stranger to this scourge. In the past, we've topped a list tracking the number of women killed at the hands of men, and legislative changes 10 years ago have improved the state's approach to this problem. But it still persists, as it is definitely not one of those issues that can just be legislated out of existence. And it's only getting harder with social media, technology, and guns that are not surrendered by misdemeanor offenders as required. I spoke with South Carolina Coalition Against Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault Executive Director Sara Barber on This Week in South Carolina about the ongoing fight against CDV, what signs partners and parents of teens need to be aware of, and so much more. Again, this is a problem that can be invisible, but it truly affects many people, many more than you realize. And I open by asking Sara just about how things are looking right now in the Palmetto State.
The numbers that stick out to me are really the prevalence of domestic violence. You know, every year SLED records around 32,000 incidents of domestic violence, ranging from simple assaults through intimidation to aggravated assaults. And we know that that is a huge undercount. You know, the Bureau of Justice Statistics estimates that between 45% and 60% of people report to law enforcement after suffering a violent victimization. So we're looking at probably up to 80,000 cases a year of domestic violence occurring in homes. And so many of those go unreported, and people aren't getting help and are staying in those situations. So that to me is the number, the big number. And then the dollar number. You know, there was a report a few years ago that estimated that South Carolina spends around $352 million a year. That's the cost of domestic violence in our state. And when you think of all the other things that we could be doing with that money, it really hits home on how this isn't an issue that just impacts those directly affected, but ripples out through our families, our communities, and our state in general.
And when we talk about those numbers, those calls that you just listed, 32,000 around that area, and how you think that's under account too, that also has to be concerning for you because it probably takes a lot for someone to even make that call in the first place. Do you think people were already suffering and kind of putting up with some sort of situation until finally they made that call, or how do you see those numbers?
Yes, I mean, I think we labor under misapprehension that it's really easy to report somebody you love for a crime. And there's many reasons why people don't report. The biggest one is fear, financial stability. Where will I go? What will I do? What will happen to my kids? And then also we sometimes forget about love. These are intimate partner relationships where people are very emotionally invested. People have kids together, houses together, lives together, families together. And so to make a call, you have to be really desperate.
How do you sum things up? Are we moving in the right direction? Are things getting better? What more needs to be done at this stage?
I think things are better. If we look back 30 years, things are better. There's a lot more awareness in the community, but we still have a long way to go. We all need to learn about what resources are. We need to learn how to react to somebody who comes forward and says they're a victim of domestic violence. Too often they're shamed or not believed. And so we need to be ready to assist them because you might be the first and only person that person tells. And your reaction to that is going to be critical. We need to invest more in prevention. We certainly have some policy priorities that we need to get through. Like right now, we're focused on a bill that would protect dating partners and allow them to access orders of protection. I think there's a lot more we can do while recognizing the achievements we've made. And I think something fundamental is that many people like to say they're against domestic violence. We all say we're against domestic violence, but then when it impacts somebody that we know, our reaction might not show that. So we can say that we support all victims, and we know victims, it's either you or somebody you know, but if it's you or somebody you know, that means you also know somebody who's using abusive behavior in the home, who's using violence, and that's a much harder thing for people to deal with, to recognize, and to start holding people accountable.
And then when we talk about some other aspects of this too, we look at how women are killed, predominantly women are killed by men in these situations with firearms. The Violence Policy Center report ends by saying, quote, "The picture that emerges each and every year from when men murder women," that's the report, "is that women face the greatest threat from someone they know, most often a spouse or other intimate acquaintance who is armed with a gun. For women in America, guns are not used to save lives, but to take them," quote. So are we still seeing men who shouldn't have guns killing women in our state too when it comes to domestic violence?
Yes, and we have no way of enforcing the gun laws that we have. I mean, really, if we're serious in recognizing that guns pose a huge threat to women when in the hands of abusers, we have to remove those guns when we have to enforce the laws we have.
Because that is part of the law from the 2015
It
law.
is part of the law, but there's very little enforcement of that law. I still think people are unwilling to do that. The way I look at it is that if you have used violence in a relationship, your Second Amendment right is not being taken from you. You have chosen to give it up because you are not a responsible person with that firearm. And if we look at the difference between this country and other countries, it's quite alarming how many more deaths we have from domestic violence than in other comparable countries. Even if our rate of simple assault might be very similar, the level of homicide is far, far higher. And in our state, the level of, or the percentage of women who are killed with guns is higher than the national average.
And so again, that law is on the books that if you commit like high or aggravated criminal domestic violence charge, that you are supposed to relinquish your guns?
It's any misdemeanor domestic violence charge. And there's a mechanism in our state to get your weapon back if you're not arrested again for a certain amount of time. And also if you are under an order of protection, you are also not supposed to have a firearm because the judge makes a separate written finding that you are a danger. So I think it's really important that we move past this unwillingness to recognize the danger that people pose and to make sure that we're enforcing the laws that we have.
Because it's just self-reporting essentially, right? I'm supposed to turn over any firearms that I have. There's no way to back that up.
Right.
Okay. But again, when it comes to domestic violence in general, do you think it's becoming more prevalent or do you see it happening kind of easier in some of these situations with just how interconnected everyone is all the time?
There's many more avenues to abuse someone now, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we've obviously had a very tragic story in South Carolina with Representative Guffey's son dying as a result of suicide when he was sextorted. So I think was another area for us to do a lot of work there is to work with young people on recognizing the signs of what this looks like and also helping them realize that if somebody does this to them, it's not the end of the world, that there are ways with social media platforms to take this information down and to move on. I think, when you're a teenager, obviously things hurt more than they do at any other time. And it can be, we tell people constantly, you can't do anything because it's going to be on the internet forever. That's not quite true. There are things that we can do and hold out that hope for people and help them recover from that. But I think there are so many ways to abuse someone now. It's easier to stalk someone. It's much harder for people to disentangle their lives if they need to move, if they need to hide their identity. People are much easier to find. And so that is very concerning.
So when we talk about it being much easier, what should folks maybe look out for? If I'm in a new relationship, and it seems like things are moving fast, but it seems like everything's working really well. But at what point, when should you start putting your antenna up? When should you start wondering, is this the right way things should be going?
So you're exactly right. It can be really difficult at the beginning to differentiate between a red flag and a normal part of a romantic relationship. But I think as it moves on, it's about whether your choices are respected. At the beginning, you might spend more time with that person and not see your friends as much. But if they start preventing you from seeing your friends, if they prevent you from seeing your family, if they're insistent that all your time is spent with them, then I think that's a definite red flag, and you should reconsider your involvement with that relationship. The longer you stay in an abusive relationship, the harder it's going to be to get out.
When we talk about destigmatizing, we were talking about sextortion, where people, might have taken a photograph of themselves in a compromising position or naked or something like that, and then they sent it to someone that they thought was someone else. Turns out they're going to try and extort them for money or expose them, and we've seen this play out more and more, especially in their teens. So kind of apply what you were talking about in terms of being there to support someone with domestic violence and what you can do to support someone who might be fearful to come forward to tell you that they sent someone a naked photo and that they're being extorted. I mean, that is a hard thing to say or to even bring up with a parent, even though you should be trusting that person. So how do you maybe create that space as a parent or a friend to not be judgmental, but just to be there so people can come to you instead of, ending their life?
As a parent, I think that's critical, that we build that level of trust with teens. And I'm not saying that's an easy thing to do. It's a very, very hard thing to do. And oftentimes parents think they have that relationship with their teen until they realize they don't. There's so much stigma in our society around sex in general, and so much stigma around doing something stupid. We don't forgive mistakes easily. And so I think as a community, we need to be able to take a step back from our judgment, to give grace to people who may have made a mistake, and to be there for them, to let them know that we'll walk that walk with them.
And I think maybe it's getting more attention too, just because it has become so publicized too. So I'm thinking that might help some destigmatizing aspects of this.
I hope so, and because it's so common. Now, if you talk to high school students, you realize how early this all starts. My daughters were telling me about people they knew who were being abused in middle school. I'm lucky, in some ways, because I have this job. There's always been a very open relationship with my daughters, and they've been able to come to me when their friends are experiencing trouble, or their friends come to them, can you ask your mom this, how to help? And so ideally, in a society, that openness would be for everybody.
There's a staggering statistic saying that 1 in 3 teens will experience dating violence, which is kind of horrific to think about. What does that look like? How can that be disguised? Is it playfulness? Does it cross a line? What do people need to recognize when it comes to teen dating violence that they need to be on the lookout for? And how do we strengthen combating that so it doesn't grow up into criminal domestic violence?
I think it's very much the same dynamics. The age is different, but the dynamics are very similar. It's always being expected to respond to calls or texts or DMs or whatever, to isolation from friends and family. That can start happening very, very early. And I think, I hate to give the schools more to do, but we need some way to reach young people starting at a very early age to talk about healthy relationships, to talk about things like refusal skills. How do you get yourself out of a relationship, so that we can help our young people engage in what are very complex relationships. Intimate relationships are very, very complicated, and yet we seem to think everybody's going to know how to do it without any training. And so we really need to take away that cultural stigma of teaching people about consent, about boundaries, about how to be in a relationship. And I think that's one way in which we can start to change the narrative in South Carolina.
You can catch that entire interview on youtube.com/South Carolina News. That's where this podcast, Twist, and much more content is now living. Welcome to the wind down section, our little break from the news. We're glad you're here, along with AT Shire, lead podcast producer. AT, you're so far away, I can't even see you. I hate this.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, I am here, but only voice alone. It's like you're listening to a podcast of me, Gavin, right now, but it's real time.
I'm tuned in. I want to know about the Eagles, AT. Can we talk about that before we get to our call, or do you need more time to talk about that?
That's very rude of you to say, but they did.
I want to talk about it.
They did lose, and they deserved to lose, okay?
Okay.
They deserved this, and they were skating by being undefeated and not addressing any of their very obvious problems. And so now, having lost, they're going to have to face these issues and actually attend to them, besides hiding behind this veneer of undefeatedness. So this is good. If we lose Thursday night to the Giants, that's going to be a problem, folks. That's when AT is really going to be upset, okay? But this is not about me yet. Okay, yeah. We do have a call, Gavin. So if you're ready, a great friend of the pod has called in. Okay, here we go.
Lay it down.
Gavin, AT, it's Cam in Columbia, the state newspaper BB2. I know AT didn't like it, but I've got to call in and continue the washing-themed wind down. 100% agree on electric toothbrush. I got one for Christmas years ago, and I have not gone back in over a decade. Fantastic cleaning, the 2-minute timer. You nailed it, Gavin. That's where it's at. Water pick, completely unnecessary. Just floss, bleed once you remember to do it every 2 weeks like the rest of us. The water pick, definitely the bidet of the mouth, but you know what is actually worth it, and I will go to my grave praising it, the bidet. The bidet of the bidet for your bum. Revolutionized my bathroom outings about 5 years ago. Huge proponent. And car washes are dumb, man. Just let your car be dirty. Come on, Gavin. Though I will say my dad, years ago in the early 2000s, had an entire business plan and research ready to open a touchless car wash if he ever, decided to pull the trigger and go into business for himself. And he never did. And 3 years later, even, they were, there was one every 2 miles in my hometown in Virginia. And now look where we are now. You can sit at the car wash across from the car wash. All right, guys. Thank you for everything that you do. Love the SC lead. Very important work and journalism. Be well.
Cam, BB2, that's Basement Boy 2. He lived in AT's basement for a time there.
Yes.
That's why he calls himself that. Thank you for calling, Cam. Fascinating conversation we just had there about cleanliness from the mouth to the bidet of bidet to the car wash across from the car wash.
Which sounds, I just pointed out, car wash across from the car wash. I'm using this against Gavin. It sounds like a Morrissey lyric. It sounds like a lyric from the Smiths. So I know that's his
a car wash from a car wash.
That's exactly right.
He knows. Now he's trying to play to my, he's like, well, if Morrissey's making fun of it, then I really can't go. No, I think it's interesting, Cam. Good allusion there to the bidet of the mouth. The water pick is still confusing to me. Yes, floss like anyone else. I have the flossers. We've talked about that in the last episode. I floss so much now that there is no bleeding. It's a fun process now. We've gotten to that stage of dental hygiene. But at the same time, I feel bad about all the waste, so it's tricky. But
like I said, I have vegan flossers for you, Gavin. It's great. It's from the Humble Company or something like that. But also, Gavin, I gotta to give Cam some credit. I don't have a bidet, but I am bidet curious. Okay.
Okay.
I'm
bidet. Take a day bidet.
I'm not against it, but I would use a bidet. See what all the hubbub is about.
See what the bidet is about. Yeah, I mean, I feel like they had a huge glow up, obviously, during the pandemic when the toilet paper crisis of 2020 took place.
A lot of people open to a lot of things during 2020.
If you enjoy the bidet, let me interest you in Europe. Let me tell you about Europe.
They just have like the spray things from next to your sink on their toilets in Europe, and I just don't know the logistics of where that water is going and how you keep it into the cistern. You know what I mean?
Well, that's the fun part, I think, that everyone talks about. So. Because it can get a little crazy.
It's a journey. It's a journey for sure. But Gavin, speaking of journeys, you've made one up to DC.
Yes, I'm in Washington, our nation's capital.
Yes.
Me and my other producer, our friend, Amy Crouch,
lesser producer,
TV producer. We flew on up here again. We've been planning this trip for weeks. I'm like, we got to start going to DC more often. Obviously we cover the State House January through May. We love doing that, but then I feel like we give the congressional delegation a little short shrift there. So I'm like, okay, it's off season for State House. Let's go up to Congress. One of the things that we are lucky and fortunate and able to do at ETV and public radio is that we have the ability and the resources to spent a week up here covering our delegation. So I was super jazzed. Got 9 people in our delegation, big names in our delegation. I want to go get some video of them, put together podcast episodes, put together some web videos this week in South Carolina. So much stuff. Clyburn has a book coming out in November. A lot of things I wanted to knock out. We had 7 out of the 9 folks locked down for interviews. But then again, now they're not coming back in. The House members are not in this week. So we're like, okay. So we're going to make the most of it. Don't worry. We have plenty of other things that we can do.
I do want to break down, though, Gavin. You said this in the body of the pod here in your script that you couldn't get a key card, and I just want to be very explicit that There are people in the Capitol that you could talk to, but you are not allowed in there because the person who issues the cards is furloughed right now.
Correct. So that's the thing. Like, we were like, okay, well, if you want to cover Congress, you need to get a credential. And I've done this before, so I have one. I was just going to go get it updated, and it gets you access to the Capitol building itself.
But that person can't do that right now
because that person is, and they've been, they're the most helpful people. I will tell you that. Like, they credential us for the conventions and stuff. But it's been interesting just popping around. Like, so we've been doing some things. We're going to have some web videos about South Carolina connections to DC. I don't know if you guys know this, but the architect of the Washington Monument was South Carolina's own Robert Mills.
Listen
who also
to this guy.
helped build that Poinsett Bridge.
Haunted! Famously haunted!
Haunted! He didn't build it haunted. It just got haunted.
Well, many say during the building, masons, a lot of masonry involved, okay? A lot of masons in the masonry.
But again, the federal shutdown has crimped some things. Obviously, when it comes to trying to get into Congress, the museums are still open, so we've popped into some museums.
Won't they think of the podcast?
Days, so.
I can speak for all listeners here, Gavin, when I say we cannot wait for your boots on the ground correspondence.
Boots on the ground.
Thank you. Boots on the ground correspondence from D.C., from the heart of the beast, or the belly of the beast, Gavin. Thank you so much. This is not the belly of this podcast. This is probably the feet or the head, whichever end you prefer. And
I think the feet.
Please the credits are the feet of the podcast, so please
say the toes. And here come the toes. What's that? What do you call that when you tickle the keys or whatever?
Tickle the ivories.
Tickle the ivories. Tickle the ivories. There we go. Tickle the ivories.
So I just want, before we go, Gavin, I want to make sure we have this right.
One more time.
The credits are the toes of the podcast, and by tickling the ivories, the keys of pianos are the toes of pianos, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Sounds interesting. Oh, you want me to throw it in here?
No, we can say.
I'll say it. You dare me to say it?
We've redacted a scoop here, folks. Okay, so just there's big things coming. Hey, Gavin just tweeted out big things tuned. Happening. Okay, folks.
Big things. Stay tuned.
All right, Gavin. Say the toes. Say the keys.
Here come the toes.
Oh, Morrissey.
This is our Morrissey podcast. But of course, thank you all for listening to the podcast and supporting us. And Cam, be like Cam. Give us a shout, 803-563-7169. We love hearing from you guys. Give us some fun things to chat about in our wind down section. And of course, you can always stay up to date with the latest news on SCETV.org and SouthCarolinaPublicRadio.org and YouTube.com/South Carolina News. That's where all the fun content is. And of course, don't forget to support your local newspapers. We love that as well. Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. That helps us get some more recognition that we deserve. The South Carolina Lead is a production of South Carolina Public Radio. Our producers, A.T. Shire. Amy Crouch is our supervising producer. Sean Birch is our executive producer. This podcast is produced with support from PRX and is made possible in part by a grant from the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, as well as listener contributions to the ETV Endowment of South Carolina. For the South Carolina Lead, I'm Gavin Jackson. Be well, South Carolina.
Is there a script for this one?
No, I'm freestyling.
Sick, dude. Dude, good for you.
Did you need a script? Hold on.
Good for you, man.